Hello and welcome, I'm Barbara O'Neill, and today we're looking into a valuable and beneficial topic, that is herbs as natural remedies. Herbs have been used for centuries across various cultures to support health and well-being, yet many of their benefits are still underappreciated. In this session, we'll discover the world of herbal medicine, highlight some of the most effective herbs for common ailments, and discuss how you can incorporate them into your daily routine. So stay tuned as we uncover the natural power of herbs and how they can be a valuable addition to your wellness toolkit.
There's a lot of herbs, and I'm just going to be targeting basically the herbs that we use. You've probably seen there's books and books and books on herbs. Yes. So let's look at burns. We've looked at aloe, but what if you don't have aloe? Well, there's something else you can use, and this is very simple and it's very effective, and it's saturated Epsom salts solution. Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate. And how you make the saturated Epsom salt solution is you have a jar of water and you put a teaspoon of Epsom salts in, it'll dissolve. Then you put another teaspoon, it'll dissolve. You keep doing that until you can't dissolve it anymore. You now have a solution of saturated Epsom salts. And what you do for a burn, you soak a cloth in it, keep it quite moist, and wrap it on the burn area. Wrap it with a cling wrap and then bandage that on. It's that simple. So my daughter Emma, she was sitting down ironing. She's the one with all the children. And there was a loud cry, one of the children, and the iron dropped and went on her thigh. And she had the holes from the steam on her thigh. And she's in Wisconsin, so, you know, she might have a little aloe plant, but not much. So she did the saturated Epsom salts. She soaked it in cloths and just laid it over the area. And she said she had about 4 thicknesses of cloth, so it was quite wet. And then she put the plastic wrap over that, and she bandaged it. And she said that that took her pain away from, you know, when you get burned, you got 10 out of 10 pain. That's excruciating pain. But she said she brought it down to about a 5, which was bearable. And by the time she went to bed that night, it was, you know, only about a 1 out of 10. Now you look at her thigh now, there's a little tiny bit of a white mark there, and yet that's steam. That's one of the worst burns. So the saturated Epsom salts is an excellent remedy for burns. Also, one lady told me that she has a jar of it in her fridge. She just has a jar there, and of course it'll just about keep forever. So she said, I've got children, and if there's a burn, she said, I've got it there quickly. Also, I have heard, and I haven't done this because I really like the Epsom salts or the aloe, is grated potato. Now you probably realise too that when someone's had a burn, that area is so incredibly tender. Whereas the aloe is very soothing, and the very wet, cool cloths of the Epsom salts are also very cooling. But grated potato, you can have the little bits from the grate. That's why it's good to grate it very tiny. But I've had people say that the grated potato made a huge difference.
When applied to a burn, potatoes can offer immediate relief by lowering the skin's temperature, which helps reduce pain. Their natural starches also contribute to a soothing effect, alleviating irritation and inflammation. Also, the moisture in potatoes helps keep the burn area hydrated, which is crucial for proper healing. To use potatoes for this purpose, you simply need to clean and peel a potato, then slice it into thin pieces or mash it into a paste. Apply the slices or mash directly to the burn, leave it on for 15-20 minutes, and then rinse the area with cool water. While this home remedy can provide temporary relief, it's important to seek medical advice for more serious burns or if you have any concerns about the injury.
So what I'd like to look now is heart. And there are some excellent herbs for the heart. Now, yesterday we looked at cayenne pepper. Now, do you remember what cayenne pepper does? Cayenne pepper, it thins the blood. Cayenne pepper also opens the capillaries. And that's important because when someone has a stroke, heart disease, the arteries are usually a lot narrower because of the build-up. But it also strengthens the arterial wall. And this is an important point because when someone's sustained damage to the arterial wall over many years, you get a little bit of scar tissue build up there. And so what the cayenne pepper does, it strengthens and brings a suppleness to that arterial wall. It's a remarkable herb. So for the heart, the cayenne pepper. Now, before I move on to the heart, I want to go through a couple more things with cayenne pepper. So cayenne pepper, even though when it goes into the blood, it thins the blood and opens the capillaries, if there's any bleeding, it'll constrict the blood vessels. So we've had people with cuts. In fact, I had a Fijian doctor come and work with us for a few weeks. And I was lecturing. She was in the kitchen and she, like most Fijians, had bare feet. And someone dropped the blender. Now, you know the blender, very thick glass, and a couple of bits went on her foot. And my dear friend is quite well padded, so she doesn't have a skinny foot like mine. There was a fair bit of subcutaneous tissue on her foot. And I could see the staff going, because I was lecturing. So I took a break and she was out the back and she had two quite severe cuts on the top of her foot. And I could see they were very deep and they looked almost a centimetre deep and a centimetre wide, and I could see the fat globules, so it's quite deep. So I ran inside, got the cayenne pepper and sprinkled the cayenne pepper into the wound. She started laughing. She said, "I can't believe what you're doing." Doesn't it hurt? Well, it's already hurting. You know, and the cayenne pepper, remember we talked about it yesterday, has an analgesic effect. It can actually, it might be an initial, I like to say tingle, some people like to say burn, but it sort of calms it down. And she just shook her head and she was laughing. Now, this was in our wild retreat, which was 2 hours from town. So we just put the cayenne pepper in and we bound it up. And she just kept shaking her head and laughing. She said, "I can't believe what you've done to me." So the next day when she changed the dressing, we left it again about 24 hours, she found that the wound was starting to close. She said to me, as a doctor, she said, "I would have stitched that." But she said, "I'm out here and I'm here to learn off you." So I thought, well, let's just see what Barbara will do. And that wound came together as if it had been stitched. Mm-hmm. She said, "I just can't believe it." She said, "I've never seen anything like it." So the cayenne pepper is remarkable in so many ways. So even though it'll open the capillaries, it'll thin the blood when you take it internally and it gets into the blood, if it comes anywhere in the blood and it sees bleeding, it'll constrict those capillaries and stop the bleeding. So the only way I can explain this is to give you Psalm 104 verse 14, where the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. So if you need dilation, it'll dilate. And if you need constriction, it'll constrict. It only constricts where there's bleeding. Yes?
Does it vary in quality or freshness if it's been opened and sealed?
Well, ideally you want cayenne pepper that's bright orange. I'm always a bit concerned when it's gone a bit brown. So you want the freshest you can get. We get our cayenne pepper from the herb wholesalers. So if you can get it from a herb shop and it's a lot more vibrant, it is a lot more potent. That's true.
You can also grow your own cayenne pepper, dry it in a dehydrator and then blend it. That's true, but since we are all so busy, I suggest you simply go buy it from the store.
So cayenne pepper can constrict whenever there's bleeding. And this is why the cayenne pepper can be helpful with glaucoma, because it can relieve the pressure in the eye. So I gave you earlier a tea, which is golden seal and eyebright for the eye. So when you make that tea, you could put just the slightest pinch of cayenne pepper in. And of course, if it's too hot, water it down a little bit. But for the brave and fearless amongst us, you can try just a pinch of cayenne pepper in with your glaucoma eye tea. So we've looked at cayenne pepper internally, we've looked at cayenne pepper to constrict bleeding, we also looked at cayenne pepper yesterday as compresses to warm up cold feet, to bring blood to any area where there has a numbing effect. So the other herb for, and by the way, how much? I say to people with wanting to have this effect because of heart problems, 1/4 teaspoon 3 times daily in a little bit of water.
Just tip it.
Yeah. Just throw it down. So last week when my back was incredibly painful, remember I woke up in the middle of the night and I could not get any comfortable position. So I went down to the kitchen and I grated the ginger, but before I started grating the ginger, I put 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper in a little bit of water and I threw it down because I was using it there to have an analgesic effect. It tingles, but it settles. Doesn't tingle for long. But probably the #1 herb for the heart is the hawthorn berry. So where I was in Manchester last week, there's just hedges and hedges of hawthorn berry. Where I was staying, there's lots of canals. Always, wherever I stay, I explore thoroughly the area on my morning walk every day. In Scotland, I think I'd surveyed most of the whole area just by my morning walk. So when I was in Manchester last week, there's lots of hedges that are hawthorn berry. Now in the hawthorn berry, the active components that affect the heart are found in the leaf, in the berry and in the bark. But most commonly, you buy the berry, you buy the dried berry. So when you make and this is what we do, we get the dried berry. We also have, see a lot of hawthorn berries grown down the bottom of Australia. Remember with Australia, the further down you go, the colder it gets. And I think, 150 years ago, they bought the hawthorn berry for hedges down in Victoria. So it does grow a lot down there. So we've got a friend that gathers a lot of berries and dries them for us. So this is 2 teaspoons. Remember I said the rule of thumb is 1 teaspoon to 1 cup of water? So with the hawthorn berry, you make it a little stronger, and then the person doesn't have to drink quite as much hawthorn berry tea. And we advise approximately 1 litre a day. What does the hawthorn berry do? The hawthorn berry regulates the heartbeat. So if someone has got heart arrhythmia, the hawthorn berry can help with that. We also make the hawthorn berry as a tincture. So to make it as a tincture, you make it very strong. And we find that it's very handy to have the tincture, especially when someone's blood pressure is high because they're stressed out. Sipping on that hawthorn berry tincture has an effect. It's a very, very safe herb. You can even use it in conjunction if the person's still on blood pressure medication. Not a problem at all. There's no contraindications with the hawthorn berry. So with the tincture, and it's a berry. So do you pour boiling water on it or do you boil it, students?
Boil it.
Yes, you do. Gentle simmer, 10 minutes. 10 minutes simmer. Because remember, the 3 things, what are the 3 things you simmer?
Roots,
The
berries,
roots, the
and
berries and the bark. The roots, the berries and the bark have to have a simmer. 10 minutes simmer.
But, was it, should you grind it to the berries?
We don't. You could. You could. You probably get it a little bit stronger then. But with the tincture, what I do is I do 2 cups of hawthorn berry and 3 cups of water. And I do a gentle simmer and I get an incredibly strong dark tea, and then I'll put it with equal amounts. Once it's cool, make sure it's cool, strain it, and then you put equal glycerin. And there's your tincture.
Hawthorn berry helps regulate heart rate. If your blood pressure is too high, it can bring it down, and if it's too low, it can bring it up. Remember Psalm 104:14, which says that God gave herbs for the service of man, showing how herbs work with the body. Recently, a lady contacted me and said, Barbara, I'm very worried about hawthorn berry because I'm on medication. If I don't take my medication, my blood pressure goes really high. I'm just worried. I told her not to worry about the hawthorn berry because it works with your body to balance the heart rate naturally.
Now, we had a guy recently who had a stroke. He was with us. He was actually Dave Babongi's twin brother. Remember Dave that had the burnt leg? Aboriginal guy. And he came to us, about 2 years ago now, and he just had a stroke. He was quite large. He was on a lot of medication. He was on statin drugs for cholesterol. He was on blood thinning medication. He was on 2 different types of blood pressure. And he did our program, and he learned about the 8 laws of health. And little by little, his weight came down. And I said to him, I can't tell you what to do with your medication, Dan. So it's Dave and Dan. But I said, if I were you, I'd stop the cholesterol-lowering medication and the blood-thinning medication. I said, you can take the cayenne pepper, whereas the cholesterol-lowering medication, as long as you keep these laws, these true remedies, you don't need to be on that medication. And he was taking the hawthorn berry. He went back home for about 8 months, and when he came back, he was this trim, muscular guy. He's in his 50s. He looked fantastic. I said, wow, Dan. He said, I'm doing exactly what you say. Exactly. Now, do you remember what I said? People say, how long will it take? I say, well, it all depends on how serious the condition is and how serious you are at implementing this. He said, I'd like to do another program. I said, sure. He did the program. He was still on 1 blood pressure medication. We took his blood pressure, and his blood pressure was 100/55. I said, Dan, your blood pressure's getting too low. I said, have you considered stopping your medication? He said, I can't. He said, the doctor says I will die if I don't take it. I said, Dan, this may have been the case 2 years ago when you just had your stroke and you were this big and drinking and smoking and eating badly. But I said, look at you now. I said, your blood pressure's going too low. I said, why don't you stop? We're here. We'll monitor you every day. We're watching you very closely. He said, okay. I took his blood pressure 2 days later, 120/70. I said, your blood pressure's perfect, Dan. Oh, he was very, very happy. Now, he went back for his yearly examination because the doctor had deemed him not fit for work. So he went back to have his assessment, and the doctor said, there's nothing wrong with you, you're going back to work. It was an incredible story. In fact, in Australia, we've got a 7-Day Adventist magazine, and it's called Signs of the Times. Well, they did a whole story on him. It was just such an incredible story. But Dan did exactly what we said to do, and he got incredible results. He thought that, he would never be able to work again. But it also shows you how the drugs will take your blood pressure down whether you need it or not. whereas the hawthorn berry will work with the needs of your body. Same with the cayenne pepper. If you take too much blood thinner, you can bleed, you know. You know, one man said to me, my nose is bleeding. I said, you're on too much blood thinner. So if you start the cayenne pepper while you're on a blood thinner, it really has to be monitored. But you can take a bucket of cayenne pepper a day and you will never bleed from the nose, because the herbs work with the needs of your body. That's the beauty of it.
If you're wondering whether you can take cayenne pepper and hawthorn berry together, we advocate that you do. These two herbs work in slightly different ways, making their combination beneficial. Hawthorn berry is known for its ability to tone and strengthen the heart. It's particularly useful for heart arrhythmia, as it helps to regulate the heart rate and bring it back to a more stable rhythm. However, it's also important to consider why someone might have heart arrhythmia or an irregular heart rate in the first place. Two common causes are caffeine and wheat allergies. Caffeine can definitely cause irregular heartbeats, and for those allergic to wheat, consuming it can disrupt their heart rate as well. Keep in mind that wheat has undergone changes over the years, which may contribute to these issues. By combining cayenne pepper and hawthorn berry, you can support heart health in multiple ways, addressing both the symptoms and potential underlying causes.
The other thing we use with heart is magnesium. So why do we use magnesium? Because magnesium is a muscle relaxant, the heart is a muscle, and magnesium relaxes the heart at rest. And the heart at rest is the bottom reading of the blood pressure. That's what, you know, if you're high when your heart is at rest, you know, that's when it's getting a concern. But you know, it's interesting, I was at the health retreat in Alabama and one of the staff said to me, Barbara, this Spanish lady, you know, she was about 40, vibrant, fit, the most luxuriant hair. Her blood pressure was something like, I don't know, 160 on 95. So I said to her, is your blood pressure usually that high? She said, it's always that high, don't bother me. So the staff said, well, we do. And I said, don't bother her. So we just left it as is. And I guess there are variations in blood pressure. We had one lady, she said to me, Barbara, I took my blood pressure at 5:30 this morning and it was this, and I took my blood pressure at 10 in the morning. What'll I do? I said, stop taking your blood pressure. You've heard of white coat blood pressure? The person's running for their doctor's appointment, they go into the room, sit down, and they see that white coat, and up goes the blood pressure.
Yeah.
It does exist, that is true. Some people just get stressed out even being in there. Yeah, that is true. So what I'd also like to look at is herbs for hormones. So we talked yesterday about the wild yam, that Mexican wild yam, and that's best used as a cream. And the second ingredient in the Anna's wild yam cream is Vitex, which is chasteberry. So chasteberry is very good at helping to balance the hormones. And dong quai. Dong quai is a root, and of course chasteberry is a berry. But to be able to take them in a concentrated form, tablet form is the best. So I've had people come to me on HRT, hormone replacement therapy. They say, can we take the Anna's wild yam cream while we're on the hormone replacement therapy? And I said, no, you can't. One has to stop and start the other. And they're on the Anna's yam cream, they're implementing the laws, and they get back to me after 2 months and they say, look, I need more help. It's not kicking in fast enough. So then I suggest they get a supplement of dong quai. and take that as well. And they get back to me a month later and say, thank you, it's doing it. Sometimes people need a little bit more help initially. She probably find 2 months on the Dong Quai, and by then the anise cream has done a little bit more, and they can often stop that. Remember, you're the guide there. Just watch and see the body's response. Some people have found that maca has helped. Maca is a relative of the wild yam.
Yeah.
You can get maca powder. And evening primrose oil. Evening primrose oil, I've had some ladies tell me that this has helped a lot. So some women have found implementing those laws and just taking chaste cherry has been enough to bring relief from hormonal problems. Some people have found Dong Quai. I probably get more feedback from Dong Quai than any other herb. Well, the most feedback I get is the anise yam cream, but not everyone can afford it and not everyone can access. So my friend in Fiji, my doctor friend, do you know what they call her now? The nutritional doctor. And she says, I get many young women from up in the interior that come down to me in Fiji who've got hormonal problems. She said they cannot afford the anise yam cream, it's too hard to get. So she said, I give them green drinks. She gives it to them 3 times a day. She said if they live in a town, they can buy and afford it, they can buy the green barley powder. But she said if they live up in the villages, I get them just to pulverise the green leaves with water and strain it and drink the water. And she said, we're getting results. And the reason for that is the chlorophyll from the green plants is a very effective blood cleanser. And that seems to have an effect, she said, to just help balance out the hormones.
In challenging situations, it's crucial to maximise available resources. I experienced this during a visit to a village that lacked running water and electricity. There I encountered a man with a severe hand injury from a hunting accident. His hand was red, swollen and visibly painful. Using limited resources, I treated his hand by alternating between hot and cold water soaks, which reduced the pain and swelling. We then applied crushed local healing plants to the wound and bandaged it. By the end of the treatment, his pain had significantly decreased, and he was visibly more comfortable. This experience highlighted the importance of improvising with what is available and the strength of community support. In areas with limited financial means, natural remedies and traditional methods can be highly effective.
We get some very wealthy guests there. And if you knock on their door, they probably slam the door in your face, but they're actually coming into your house. They're coming into your house and you're teaching them, because many people are frustrated and sick of the drugs. Isn't that true? Because it's not working anymore. So there's some herbs that you can do, and even if you get into primitive areas where people don't have a lot of money, there's always something that you can do. And remember that where God says, I will hold thine hand, I will keep thee. And in Psalm 32 verse 8, the Bible says, I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way that thou shalt go. He says, I will guide thee with mine eye. I just thought of one area for aloe vera, just came to my mind. One more thing you can do with aloe vera, and that is to make suppositories. So how do you make a suppository with aloe vera? You cut the flesh the size of your little finger. So you thinly slice it one side, you know, get a nice thick leaf, and then you freeze that. And people can use that for hemorrhoids, internal hemorrhoids and external hemorrhoids. How do they know if they've got internal hemorrhoids? When they do a bowel movement and there's red blood there. Red blood means there's just bleeding near the opening. And of course, external hemorrhoids, they really know that is there. And we also talked about the sitz baths. Hot and colds is very good for that. And there's another one, so the suppository. In fact, we've got a section in our freezer where we've got a whole lot of them. And another suppository is castor oil. But castor oil takes 3 days to freeze. And what you do, you moisten a cotton ball with it and mould it to like your little finger. And remember, 3 days to freeze. And it must, of course, be inserted frozen. That can also help a lot with hemorrhoids. What about skin? What about eczema, psoriasis? What can you put on the skin? Do you know there's not much? Because eczema and psoriasis are from internal. And the skin is the last section out. Eczema or psoriasis is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that arise because of a violation of the laws of health. So one of the laws of health that's violated can even be exposure to mould. So not fresh air. Mould can be a factor. We had a guy come from Saudi Arabia who had very severe psoriasis. The back of his neck was like crocodile skin. He was 40. Now he had improved because he found a website, and it was called cortisone-induced eczema. And he'd been applying cortisone for 20 years, and he had what they called cortisone-induced eczema. It got to the point where the cortisone was basically causing it. And apparently a German doctor resides over this site, and he says you just got to stop the cortisone. You've just got to stop it. You're going to go through sheer hell for about 3 months, just live in a bath. And people that do have skin problems, very itchy, they often find a bath with a bag of oats in it and squeeze the oat water in. That can be relieving. And there's a pine substance that you can buy and put in a bath, and that apparently can be relieving. So when he came to us, he'd gone through the worst. He had a few little red itchy bits on his arms. The back of his neck was quite bad. He ate a lot of peanuts, a lot of wheat, a lot of oats, a lot of refined sugar. So we advised him on that. We don't serve any of that at our health retreat. At the end of 2 weeks, and he had the steams every night, he really enjoyed the steams. Diving in the cold water, back from there. He felt so good. He was there with his wife. They were Malaysian. At the end of the 2 weeks, he said, we're a little disappointed that, it has not improved very much. And I smiled. I said, it takes 2 months to get the residue of those allergens out of the body. So you've got to give it 2 months, even though you haven't had any. And how many people stop them, and after a month they say, well, it's not doing anything. They haven't given it enough time. Where's our time factor?
It typically takes at least 2 months to eliminate allergens from your body. This man went home, and 6 weeks later we received an email confirming that all the allergens were gone precisely 2 months after starting the process. While the exact time frame can vary, most people begin to notice significant improvements within 2 months, though it may take longer for some. Factors such as late nights, caffeine consumption and lack of exercise can slow down this process.
How do we get people to sleep? I'm going to be giving a whole presentation on sleep. But there are some herbs that can help with sleep. So we have a tincture that we make, and it's passion flower. Passion flower soothes the passions. I think that's why they call it passion flower. And of course that's a flower. Skullcap. Skullcap is a dried herb. St. John's wort. St. John's wort is also a dried herb. Leaf and flower. That's flower. I think that's leaf. And we call this mix our relax herbs. These all are mild tranquilizers, mild sedatives. So if someone's coming off alcohol, we've had people come off methamphetamines, we've had people come off marijuana, methadone. We even had a champagne alcoholic do our program. Lots of smokers coming off smoking. We give them that 3 times a day, and I make it in a tincture form, the way that I described before. The beauty of the tincture form is they can have a spoonful, even every half hour. Well, rarely do they have to do that. St. John's wort is a nerve nourisher, so it nourishes the nerves. And when people are coming off these stimulants, their nerves are on edge. And at night, we put in a stronger tranquilizer sedative, and it's valerian. And so we put these 3 together. We call them our relax herbs. And then when we add that, we call that our sleepy herbs. You can buy them in a tablet form, you can buy them in a capsule form. So that's number 1. Another one, number 2, some people find that melatonin helps. And as you'll see when I talk about sleep, it's a naturally occurring hormone from the pineal gland. Some people find that magnesium puts them to sleep. It's a muscle relaxant, so it can certainly relax to put people to sleep. But looking at herbs, they're probably the main herbs. I have had ladies find that when they go on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, they start sleeping better. Much depends on why they can't sleep, when it all started, the different factors that are coming together. And I'll be looking at that in more detail when we look at sleep, but basically they're the herbs. For some people, this has a great effect. For some people, it hardly makes any difference, so you try the different things. Pardon? Yes, chamomile. Chamomile is a mild tranquilizer. It's probably a little milder than those, but some people find just the chamomile tea helps. So if someone's very stressed out, we find that the relax herbs can make a big difference. And sometimes if a person's really stressed out, we just give them a hot foot bath. This is a straight hot foot bath, not hot and colds, just feet in hot water for maybe 20 minutes. Yeah?
I know that Ellen White was negative towards cinnamon, but banana and cinnamon works really well also for sleep.
Well, banana stimulates melatonin. Banana stimulates the release of melatonin. That's why it's a great evening meal for the children. But if someone has diabetes or conquering cancer, the banana's not the best because it's very high sweet.
Doesn't it have magnesium in it as well, the banana?
Yes, it does. It does. Sometimes just a hot foot bath is enough to relax a person if they're stressed or can't sleep. The hydrotherapist's first rule is warm the feet.
Nature offers remedies for nearly every human ailment, with herbs being particularly effective. Unlike synthetic medications, which can have numerous side effects, herbs provide gentle, holistic healing. For instance, turmeric reduces inflammation, ginger aids digestion, and echinacea boosts immunity. Herbs often contain multiple beneficial compounds, promoting overall well-being and minimizing health risks. This makes them a valuable and sustainable alternative to conventional medications. That's all for today's look at herbs as natural remedies. We've covered how to use herbs for burns, heart health, hormones, skin issues and sleep. Each herb has its own benefits and can be a helpful addition to your daily routine. If you have any questions or need more tips on using herbs, don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks for joining me, and here's to using nature's remedies to support your health and well-being.